Coming out of the European Union, Roger Helmer is one of two UKIP MEPs representing the East Midlands in Brussels, and Kat Bürtger is from the East Midlands Green Party and their spokesperson on the EU. Welcome to you both. So let's tackle the referendum briefly at this point. Roger, what's your take on the news that the government is sending out pamphlets to homes across the country, setting out the argument for staying in?
Well, it's outrageous. They're breaking clear commitments that they've given repeatedly, that they wouldn't engage and spend public money on one side or the other side. And they are putting themselves in a position where the Remain campaign will be spending many, many millions of pounds, and in this case of taxpayers' money, more than the Leave campaign can spend.
Isn't it right that the public are provided with the facts?
The public provided with the facts would be good. And if you go back to the 1975 referendum, which I can nearly remember, they were actually presented with a double-sided sheet. So you had the in arguments and the out arguments. What the government is doing is a very big, glossy brochure, printed, by the way, by a German company that receives funding from the Commission, and it puts very contentious arguments in favour of staying in, and it ignores the arguments in favour of staying out. It's entirely wrong.
Kat Bürtger, what do you think? Is it wrong?
I actually agree with Roger here, although I'm on the side of the in. Of course, we'd like to stay in the EU. I don't think it's fair. This is taxpayers' money. I do agree we need an informed, balanced debate, and there is a lot of scaremongering going on both sides, I have to say, and I think we need to discuss this in an adult way, but we shouldn't be biased. If we are providing facts, it should be done on both sides.
Well, you both want the public to be provided with more facts.
Yes.
Let's get one fact from each of you, if we can. Roger Helmer, what is the biggest reason that people here in the East Midlands, in particular, should vote, in your opinion, to leave?
Well, of course, there are all the economic benefits and the democratic benefits, but what I find, talking to people on the doorstep and in marketplaces and streets as we campaign, is the real concern about immigration and the impact that has on social infrastructure and social cohesion, on schools, on hospitals, on waiting lists, and also, by the way, on wage compression, because the availability of very large numbers of people coming in, of course, tends to depress wages, especially of the relatively low-skilled and unskilled workers.
Kat Bürtger, in your opinion, what's the number one reason why people in the East Midlands should stay in?
Because the EU provides us with really good legislation to protect workers' rights, disability rights, women's rights, and also environmental protection. We have 80% of environmental law comes directly from the EU, and I don't trust this government that their priority would be to protect the environment, to protect the normal person on the street. They've shown very clearly they are providing tax breaks for the rich, and we all are feeling the austerity and cuts. So I would like to have the EU to provide us with these important legislation. And yes, we could have this government to provide these laws, but they wouldn't, and they don't.
You don't trust the British people to elect a government that will act in the interests of this country. I do trust the British people. That is the difference.
OK, well, I'm sure we are going to be coming back to the EU later on in the programme, but next, power to the people is a glib cliché often used by politicians, but council setting up an energy company like this. Is that a good idea?
I'm not sure that it is. I think the government is selling us a false prospectus here. They're trying to pretend that high energy prices are just the fault of those wicked energy companies. Actually, they're the fault of the overcommitment to very expensive, intermittent, unreliable, renewable technologies and the closing down, as Europe has demanded we do, of reliable, low-cost power stations like coal-fired power stations and so on. That is what is driving energy prices, and talking about shopping around and getting a bit more competition is really fiddling at the margin compared to those basic issues.
Green technology pushing up those prices.
That's simply not true, and we've seen it in Germany that prices have been going down. What's really important is we need to look after our environment. I don't want to live in a polluted country. And I welcome this move of Nottingham City Council. However, I would like to see that they're using renewables, because again, we are facing climate change, and it's the greatest threat we are all facing. Plus, over the long term, it will get the prices down. At the moment, we're subsidising fossil fuels much more still than green technology, and that's a fact.
It's a nonsense.
It's absolute fact. Plus, renewables worldwide provides more jobs than the entire fossil fuel industry together. So we have also an economic reason and gain from this.
Roger Helmer, it's well known you don't believe in climate change.
I don't believe that human activity makes a major contribution to climate change. I agree that the climate changes. It always has for millions and millions and millions of years. No, I'm afraid that Kat is simply wrong there. Domestic energy prices are going up very rapidly in Germany, are a major social problem. They've done that in order to protect their energy-intensive industries, which is why you can make steel in Germany, and it's really extremely difficult to make steel in Britain. So I'm all in favour of protecting energy-intensive businesses, but not if it means piling the costs onto domestic consumers.
We already have a large energy supplier here in the East Midlands. They're called E.ON, and they say that they welcome competition in the energy market generally, but they also pointed out that actually they employ 5,000 people from this region. Should a council, like Nottingham City Council, be entering into a competition like this, if you like, with an energy company?
Well, they will be then providing jobs, so it doesn't really matter. I think we know that smaller companies usually serve better customer care. Plus, Nottingham City Council's aim would be really to help people to manage these prices and out of poverty, you know, and energy poverty. Now, E.ON's priority is profit, and that's the problem with all of those private cooperative markets, that they are profit-driven and not driven to provide and help customers.
So how would UKIP bring down energy prices then, Roger?
Well, we would scrap the European Union's large combustion plant directive and indeed their new medium combustion plant directive, and we would focus on reliable, low-cost forms of energy, and we would reduce all the massive subsidies and green taxes that are not only raising energy prices but are closing Port Talbot as well.
Kat?
I really find it astounding. We know that thousands of people die every year because of our air pollution from coal power stations. We've seen in China people having, you know, you can see the smog there. They've been ordering bottles from Canada with fresh air. This is the future. If we don't look after our home, this is our home, we're living in it. And we know that thousands of people die because of the poor quality, and also we are going to be facing that we run out of fossil fuels sooner or later. That's a fact. So why not start this transition now?
Not for centuries. And can I just say, coal-fired power stations, yes, they are extremely dirty in China, but the technology is there.
Air pollution is a serious problem in this country.
We know how to take particulates and SOx and NOx and the dangerous gases out of coal-fired power stations.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
We know to some extent, and that actually is quite an expensive technology. So this is not the answer.
OK, well, we'll leave that there for the moment. Thank you very much. There are, of course, other votes taking place this year besides the EU referendum.
Seen more as a community role, and there's a lot the PCs can do, especially now that we have the Health and Social Care Bill, where the police sits on the board in the Health and Wellbeing Board.
So they can get stuck in at local level.
That's
OK.
right.
Roger, UKIP are fielding candidates again this time round. So why do you think the PCC is an important role?
Well, it's not perhaps the structure that we would have created, but we do very strongly support the democratisation and the accountability of the police force, and we believe police forces should be responding to the needs of the public. And ideally, the PCC should be right at the front of that operation and should be in touch with ordinary people, with voters, so that he can feed back the opinions and the objectives and the aspirations of those people with regard to the police force into the police operation. Now, if they're not doing that, then they become invisible, and I think that is the concern. We had an extremely low turnout last time. My fear is that we may do this time, and what we want is people who form that bridge between the general public and the police and bring the two together, as it were.
Kat, but there are no Greens standing in our patch for PCCs. Are you against the idea of them, or is it rather the £5,000 deposit that's rather getting in the way?
Well, we are in principle against it. We would rather have the money spent. I mean, I believe PCCs earn between £65,000 and £100,000. That's a lot of money, particularly these times of austerity. We'd rather spend the money to employ community officers, to have people really on the street that can engage with the public.
But as we've just heard from both our colleagues here in the studio with us, the role of the PCC, if it works, is to get really close into the local community.
Well, but it's one person.
Yes, and you're very keen on that local democracy, aren't you?
Well, but it's one person. We would rather employ more people who can spend the time directly with people. Now, of course, the £5,000 is an issue, and I believe that the whole selection process, last time we had a 12% turnout, I think it's just part of the problem we have today in the UK with politics. This government has been voted in by only 23% of the votes. People are disengaged with politics, and that's very clear. We need to change it. We need to change the system and the voting system.
I think a lot of people were turned off, weren't they, by the cost and the salary of the PCCs could realise. And one of the criticisms, Dr. Kong, of the role of Commissioner is that it does just, or it can, add another layer of bureaucracy. And perhaps people just say, we just don't need that, an extra tier of
I don't really see that. There's only one police commissioner and maybe a few support staff. But if you have the right person of the right calibre who aligns himself with members of the public, then I see it's tremendous value for money. If you look at the raw value of the salary, which is about £70,000, well, you probably can get 2, 3 police officers, and that's about it. Whereas if you get a person of high calibre who knows what's needed for community policing, you get a lot more benefit out of the £70,000 than just 3 police officers.
What do you think will be the turnout, though, as we know, and we've been saying 12% last time, that could happen again or worse?
Yes, that's my concern. I think it's been sold, as I said earlier, as a political entity rather than as a community facility. If the public realises that the PCC is there for them, and if the PCC aligns himself or herself with the public, then there's a lot to be gained. Because one of the key roles of a PCC is to actually win the support of the public, work with them, use all the intelligence they can bring to bear in preventing crime.
What does it say, though, when we know for a fact that 3 out of 4 of the PCCs currently standing are standing down?
I can't answer for them.
Maybe they were too old when they started. But I think this is the big test. I don't think that the PCCs that exist at the moment have really succeeded in making that impact on the public. It's up to the next generation of them, as it were, to do that, because if they don't, I think then, and the turnout keeps going down and down and down, people really are going to say, well, this isn't working, they're not actually delivering on what we thought they were there for.
Perhaps the role has been tougher than they thought it was going to be.
Well, I think it's very clear. Last time nobody voted, or very few people voted, and we are seeing, again, disengagement. So the argument from our side really stands and is shown to be true, that people are disengaged. And this is a lot of money. Most people, £70,000 is a lot of money, particularly during times where we're not all in it together and where we're all feeling the cuts. And I find it really difficult that we are having these police commissioners who are all part of political parties, and we're really bringing in party politics in policing, which I'm not sure is the right thing, and I'm not sure that people want that.
Well, we'll soon know, won't we, when the elections take place next month. Dr. Kong, thank you very much indeed for coming into the studio and talking to us now. Those PCC elections are taking place on May the 5th. All of the candidates are now declared. There are 4 people standing in Derbyshire looking to replace Alan Charles. In Nottinghamshire, there are 5 candidates for the role. Leicestershire and Rutland has 4 people vying to become the new Police and Crime Commissioner, replacing Sir Clive Loader, who's stepping down. And in Lincolnshire, there are 4 people looking to take over from the current PCC, independent Alan Hardwick, who's also retiring.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.